stories. I've written down on this notebook, and I've been really, really busy. So busy
Oh,
with school and also busy with those guys.
and are you back did you have school this past week in Lafayette, Conor?
I did, but
Okay.
it's Labor Day, so
Right. Today
my
you have
my
off.
dad's off at work and all my family's off at work.
Right. And I understanding from my first visit to New Orleans, and I actually visited Lafayette. We would call it Lafayette, but I remember people in Louisiana calling it Lafayette.
Yes, some people say that, some people don't. It is. And this at this time, I really feel sorry for New Orleans because they not only lost power, but they lost water as well. So that's happened in Tahoma, happened
Yeah.
to La Place, happened to several. Grand Isle was a mess. I,
Total
I
mess.
was
Yeah.
I was at school seeing the damage of the camps, and they're nothing but smithereens at this point. So terrible.
Yeah. I had to hit Annapolis fairly hard as well. We got a lot of the aftermath. We had like 4 tornadoes touch down right on the eastern shore. We actually had a tornado touchdown right across the river from where our school is. Our school's on a river.
Oh my gosh, that's right. I certainly heard about that, Trey, and I thought about you.
Yeah. I remember my nan was frantically texting me, and
Yeah.
and pop-up Jim is like, are
you okay? So
okay?
how far away was that tornado?
It was, so I was at school in Hillsmere, which is close to the South River. It was right across the South River from where we were. Like I could somewhat see it. It was crazy. And we drove down West Street the other day. It's just flattened, completely flattened.
Oh, how terrifying. Terrifying. Hey, we are ready to start the program, right?
All right.
Let's
Yes, sir.
Get it rolling.
Caleb's here tonight too.
Yes, we have Caleb. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Hey, good evening, everybody, and happy Labor Day on this Monday, September 6th. This is the VBC Happy Hour. I know we have many people enjoying at least what is a beautiful evening here in Western Pennsylvania. I understand also in Chicago. Is that right, Ellie?
That's right. Yeah.
Sean Hall, our director of programming. Why in the world don't you have today off? It's Labor Day.
Because there's no crying in baseball, Todd.
Okay. There's no and there's no sleep here in the Veterans Breakfast Club. We just
keep on keeping on.
Yeah, we don't know the word holiday. We don't know the word. We don't know the word day off. So this is our VBC Happy Hour, and this is very much a program that we've been looking forward to for a while, and I know many of you have too, because this is where we showcase 3 of our youngest participants, and these are people who have really been participating for months, if not in Henry's case, certainly well over a year. In these programs, listening to stories of veterans from, the youngest veterans to the oldest. And what's so impressive is all through this COVID-19 year and a half, these are 3 young people who have joined us, asked questions, shared stories, really participated vigorously, hung on to the end when we've had 2-hour programs. And I think I would speak for a lot of people who have been watching over the past year, just to say that it kind of warms our hearts that young people, Henry Shepke from Madison, Wisconsin, age 13, Trey Berman from Annapolis, age 14, and Conor Richie, age 16. He's our senior teenager here tonight from Lafayette, Louisiana. It warms our hearts that these 3 teenagers would care so much about veteran stories, and especially the stories of our oldest veterans from World War II. That's just it's just a wonderful thing, and we're very grateful to have them here. And right before I introduce them, however, I do notice that we have a World War II veteran with us who we have not had before. This is Lou Graziano. Lou, I have read about you quite a bit, actually. I've read about you a lot. I understand that you're receiving the Legion of Honor, the French Legion of Honor Award next week, I think it is. Lou Graziano is a veteran who was on the third wave on D-Day at Omaha Beach, served all the way through, through the Battle of the Bulge, through to the surrender. And my understanding, Lou, is you're the last surviving person who witnessed the peace, the end of the war, the surrender instrument being signed in Reims, France on May 8th, 1945. Is that true?
That's right. That's true. I was there.
You were there.
Mhm.
How in the world did you get in that so-called Little Red Schoolhouse?
Well, I was in charge of the city of Reims, France, and the Little Red Schoolhouse. So I was taking care of that room.
So you were taking care of the room.
Right. Where they're all going to sit and all. I knew just where they're all going to be.
And let's see, who was there? De Gaulle was there, and Montgomery.
Yes.
Yardell.
Bodell and the British and the officers were there too, and Russian
Soviet.
That's right.
officers.
Oh man, that is an amazing piece of history you were witness to. And Lou, I talked to your daughter earlier today, Kim, and it surprised me when she said that that she had not heard your stories until pretty recently, until you wrote your memoir, till you wrote your book.
That's right. They wanted me to tell some stories, so I finally told them, well, let's make a book and I'll give you all the history. Most of it anyway.
Most of it. So there are some stories you didn't tell, huh?
There's some I didn't tell, right?
There's still some that he says are classified.
And you can tell by Kim's wonderful accent that you are reaching us from down south in Georgia.
That's correct.
Right.
Near Augusta, Georgia, correct?
Yes.
That's right.
And I think Lou and Kim, you're going to be able to join us, I hope, on Monday, September 20th.
That'll be
You broke up a little bit there. I couldn't hear you, Kim. Could you repeat that?
his presentation is on the 17th.
Yes, his
presentation.
Right. You were receiving the French Legion of Honor Award on September 7th.
Mhm.
Right. On September 17th.
Right.
And that's being live streamed. And we're going to, once you get that link, Kim, we will share that with people. But I guess what I'm asking is,
Okay.
I'm hoping that you'll be able to come on our program, this program here on Monday, September 20th. So we could, spend an hour and a half with you, having you tell us some of the stories that are in your book.
Yes, I guess I can.
Okay, we'll take that as a yes. I will lock you in then. Thank you, Lou. And do you go by Louie or Lou?
He says, don't not call him for dinner.
Okay.
Oh.
He'll answer to anything.
I was going to say, do you prefer Louis, Louie, or Lou?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. We'll
Just
call
so
you.
it's not late for dinner.
Okay, very good. Call you Lou. And how old are you, Lou?
98.
98 years old. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have 3 teenagers here with us who I'm sure would love to contact you. Conor, are you going to be, let me introduce Conor first, since he is our senior teenager. This is Conor Richie from Lafayette, Louisiana. Conor has interviewed over the phone how many World War II veterans? 22 or 23 by now, Conor?
23.
23. And you have a notebook filled with notes of the stories that they've told you.
Yes, I do.
And do you think you would want to interview Lou Graziano someday?
Oh, of course. No problem.
Oh, I think he would have a lot of stories to share with you.
Yeah,
Have you? I was going to ask, have you interviewed D-Day veterans?
I have, yes.
And can you tell us a story or two that you've interviewed of a D-Day veteran?
Oh, Jim Deal, who's now 98 now. He was a tank gunner on D-Day with the 737th Tank Battalion. And after that, he was part of General Patton's Operation Cobra. He was under Patton through Rhineland in Europe, and he was wounded pretty badly by a piece of shrapnel on both of his thighs. But he survived that tremendously.
Wow. And he's just kind of one of the 23 World War II veterans that you've talked to over the phone. What interests you about these veterans and their stories?
Well, first of all, my great-grandfather inspired me to do this, and second of all, I think there's people out there who don't know, who obviously don't really care, and have no clue what they went through. They're totally clueless. If the teacher asks you, "Oh, who's J.P. Morgan?" they have no clue who that is.
Yeah,
I think that's very, very sad and devastating to me. So that's why I actually do this.
and you've said to me, Conor, that some of our oldest citizens are World War II veterans, and time is of the essence. This is our opportunity to get their stories and make sure that they're passed on.
That is true. Absolutely true.
You're dedicated to that. Let me go to Henry Shepke. Henry, you have been with us. You started joining our VBC programs here online. Gosh, it must have been April 2020 or May 2020. I mean, well over a year ago. And you're 13 years old. And you said that you got into this because you're an autograph collector and you collect veterans' autographs.
Yeah, so, well, I originally collected like sports players' autographs and stuff like that. But I really started getting into interested in history in like 4th or 5th grade. And I saw this video from Caleb, actually. I don't know if he's on here or not.
Caleb's with us.
But collecting showing his autographs of World War II veterans, and that made me want to, start collecting autographs. And so I reached out to a bunch of organizations, including the Veterans Breakfast Club, to try to connect with veterans. And that's how I found out about the VBC.
And I know also you have a project, and Ben Wright just reminded me here in the chat on the Zoom side. Ben Wright reminded me that you had a project of writing. You wanted to write to World War II veterans, and your goal was to write to 500 World War II veterans this year. How is that going? How far have you gotten?
Well, I don't know exact number off the top of my head, but I'm going pretty good. I'm hoping to write 5 letters a day for September, and get them a bunch sent out. But hopefully I'll be able to get to my goal of 500.
And you have all the stamps that you need so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Good, because we did a stamp drive earlier this year for you in March and April, and I know a lot of people responded, including several people here on this Zoom program. Would you like to have Lou Graziano's autograph?
Yeah, for sure. I would love to get his autograph for my collection.
What do you say, Lou? Would you mind autographing a card for Henry?
Yes, I have some cards already. I can send. I'll show you one right here.
Okay.
You see it?
Oh, yeah. Could you hold it up a little bit more? Oh, look at that picture. That's
my wife.
That's your wife.
That was. Mm-hmm.
Right. And you guys met during the war.
That's right.
Could you tell us how you met your wife?
Well, I met her at the Marines where they're having a softball game, and she was a pitcher. And my buddy says, "Let's go to the ball game." I says, "Okay." And his girlfriend went with him. And I says, "Who's that pitcher?" She said, that's Bobby. She's my best girlfriend. I says, okay. That's how I met her at the ball game. So next day I went and made a date with her. And for that night. And she said, okay. So when I went for the date, the ladies told me she already left with somebody.
Oh.
So I got stood up that time. So the ladies told her she'd never get another date. She told them she would. So later, a few weeks later, I went back and asked for a date again. And that time she was there and was there ever since she passed away.
Oh, and how long were you married?
Pardon? Yeah, we married over there in France, in Reims.
Wow.
And we were together 63 years.
63 years. Oh, how wonderful. Oh, how terrific. Thank you, Lou, for sharing that information. And I'm going to share some pictures of you that I found, including the cover of your book. Wow, did you have a great, that's a great photograph that you have on the cover of your book. But I want to introduce our third teenager we have with us. This is Trey Berman from Annapolis. Trey, how are you?
Good. How's everybody in the call? I'm hoping they're doing well. I'm doing good. My Labor Day has been pretty good.
I thought of you the other day when Hurricane Ida hit, and then there was this, unbelievable weather here in the Northeast and Philadelphia, New York City, New Jersey. And I read about a big tornado in Annapolis, and I immediately thought about you. How close was that to you?
It was insane. There was one across the river from my school, South River. I think the river's called, and it was, I heard there was one across, but I definitely know there was one up closer toward Washington, DC. And I know there was one on West Street, which is, if you're not familiar with the layout of Annapolis, like right in the center of Annapolis. That's like the heart of Annapolis. One touched down and just completely destroyed the street on, I think Saturday I was down there. And we were driving through West Street to get some dry cleaning that, there's a dry cleaning store down there. And it's just, they've done a good job cleaning it up, but it's just flattened parts of it. Just empty parking lot. There are street lights that are missing. And you can definitely tell that there's been like stuff. I remember hearing on the news, like there was gasoline just in the air from broken gasoline pipes. And I was like, I'd never experienced something like that before, because Annapolis is a very lucky place where we rarely get large weather conditions because of the way we're put. We're not too flat, but we're also not too like hilly, rocky, and we're not close enough to the water to get tsunamis. Yeah,
you don't think of Annapolis being in an extreme weather location, but Annapolis is the location of the Naval Academy. And that clearly has something to do with your interest in veterans and military history. We can see behind you model ships. What is your connection to the Naval Academy? Your father?
Yep, my dad is a Navy sailing coach, so he coaches the dinghy team for sailing, and I've always been around there. And I blame that. I blame three things on my descent into madness. I blame that. I blame the internet, and I blame
your grandfather.
I blame my grandfather. Yes.
Good.
I see him in the call. I know you're there. Hi. But yeah, I've just been around Navy my entire life. But the first time I really started getting into this was when I downloaded the video game War Thunder, which is basically a giant vehicle combat game where you play tanks and ships and airplanes and you have a giant battle. And I remember seeing all these tanks and planes, and I remember I've seen some of those at the Naval Academy. The one that clicked was the F4 Phantom. I'm like, I saw that at the Naval Academy. That's by one of the gates to the Naval Academy. They have 4 planes, and one of them's a Phantom. And I started looking into it, especially the warships, because of course Navy. And I started being attracted to drawn to the ships, their design, their weaknesses, their strength, their stories, what the stories of the ships, the stories of the veterans. I just started reading. And I talked to my grandparents, and I talked with Pop. Hi, Jim. I wanted to say your actual name. Since
Jim. Yeah, we should introduce Jim Wojcik and Peggy Wojcik are your grandparents, and here they are beaming in from. Are you in Mount Lebanon? You're in Charleston right now, Jim.
They're Mount Lebanon, I think.
Okay, very good.
But yeah, I've just been around the Navy my entire life, and I made it my mission to go and learn about as much of this stuff as possible, and also to visit as many ships as possible and visit as many tanks and airplanes as possible. And I've knocked a lot of ships off my list, and I've knocked a lot of planes off my list just now. Just a couple weeks ago, my Nan and Papa just took me up to the Air Force Museum. It's in Ohio somewhere, but there's a ton of planes there.
Yeah.
Dayton. Yeah. And we also went, knocked off 2 more ships, the Sullivans and the Little Rock.
Buffalo.
Yep. In Buffalo. And I've been on a ton of other ships, including the New Jersey, the Yorktown, one Russian submarine that almost started World War III. If anybody wants me to get into that later in the call, I can. But it's a very interesting story. I actually encourage people to pursue it on their own. It was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's all I'll give for now. But I've just been around Navy and just around veterans and around history for pretty much my entire life. My grandpa was a veteran of the Korean War, not actually of the Korean War, but he served during the Korean War, and he was in a 40 millimeter gun mount operator. So the Bofors 40 millimeter. Which was basically slapped on every single ship during World War II in the United States military. They had a tank version. They actually still have it, the original World War II LS-60 on the AC-130 gunship to this day, because it's that successful of a design. It's a Swedish design.
Swedish, that's right. The boat. And I want to point out, we have a World War II Navy veteran, Bob Young, with us. And hi, Bob. Kayla or Trey, out of the young people we have here with us this evening, you're the one who really does have specific plans in the future to join the military if you can. That's correct. And you'd prefer the Navy?
Yes, my plans are I'm going to be a nuclear engineer on a submarine, one of the guys who operates the reactors, and then gain that experience. So when I get out of the Navy, I can go into the civilian nuclear power trade, because I feel like that's going to be the way forward with climate change. And I feel like, if I'm going to have a job, it might as well be serving my country and serving the world.
And I don't think there's a lot. I think there's not a single person on this event that would doubt that you have the ability and the drive and the brain power to be a nuclear engineer. That is, what a fantastic goal you have.
Oh no, everybody who's met me knows that I do not have the brain power to be a nuclear engineer. Anything out of naval history is out of my league. It's like 2 + 2 is what?
Yeah, you better brush up on that math, I think. And I wonder, Bob Young, do you have any advice for a kid who's thinking of joining the Navy? Let's bring Bob Young into this. Hey, Bob, how are you?
Good, I'm very well.
Good.
Any advice for the kids?
Yeah, do you have any advice?
I can tell them that out of all the different places you could go, I think the Navy is the best, because you always have a place to sleep and you always have a place to eat.
Yes. They don't always feed you in the Army.
I can attest to the fact that the Navy is the best service branch, in my opinion. Might be around because of my surroundings, but I'm just gonna say it. Navy is. I've just been around it. I like the academy. Our football team isn't the best though. West Point has that over us.
Carl Curtis is having a tough time not laughing. I could see it from here. The Marine Carl Curtis.
Hey, the Marines are cool. They're part of the Navy. I talk to them a lot.
Yeah. So you do. You're around Navy personnel often, right?
One of my dad's assistants used to serve on the USS Ford, the new nuclear aircraft carrier that is having a lot of technical difficulties.
Right.
They tried to test it and they accidentally broke it. They're multi-billion-dollar aircraft carrier.
The largest ship in the world, maybe.
Yep.
Right?
No, not the largest ship in the world. The largest ship in the world are actually super tankers.
Okay.
The reason why we want the carriers to be smaller than that is because we don't want to spend that much more money on them. for just a marginal plane boost. Because again, nowadays it's all about survivability and just how many airplanes you can fit on it. Back then, carriers were really large because we had to put the guns on, we had to put the anti-aircraft on. Now we can get rid of all that. And also, it was a very experimental time as we were building them, especially with the USS Lexington, which is quite interesting. Look at the original USS Lexington after the stream. It is basically a heavy cruiser that can carry airplanes. It was actually originally a battle cruiser that they then converted into an aircraft carrier after the 1922 Washington Naval Treaty.
Let me ask Henry Shepke, how do Henry, and then I'll ask Conor this, and Trey also, but we've talked a little bit about before about how like World War II history, Vietnam War history, Korean War history is taught in the schools. Have you had much exposure to that history, Henry, in Madison, Wisconsin?
Not really. They haven't really taught history at all not in elementary school, and so far not in middle school. They don't really teach World War II. I mean, probably I could say many classmates don't even know like basic stuff like who we gained independence from and whatever, which makes me a little bit upset because I think it should be emphasized more because it's really important to learn about it. And I feel like whenever they do teach history, which isn't that often, it sometimes comes out in a biased way, which is not too good in my opinion. But yeah, they don't, at least for me, they haven't really taught history at the schools I've been to.
You mentioned you might have an interest eventually in joining the military. What branch might you be interested in?
Army.
Army. Why the Army?
Well, my great grandfather was in the Army during World War II. And I don't know, I just like the Army, like West Point. I don't know, I just like the Army over the other branches.
You know, Henry, Mr. Masters, Scott Masters here from Toronto, Canada. Hey, Scott, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Henry was recently in one of your classrooms, or your Zoom classrooms.
Yeah, we did World War II interviews throughout the summer, maybe once a week or something like that. And a lot of students will join me, small groups, maybe 5, 6, 7 students. And I knew that I had one arranged, and I asked Henry if he wanted to be involved, and he did. So we interviewed a 101-year-old Canadian major.
Oh, how great.
Who had the last name Eisenhower. No relation, though.
And different spelling, right?
Yep, that's right.
Harry Eisenhower. And so Henry just, Henry, you're a 13-year-old kid. You should be out playing ball or something like that, not, talking to some Canadian teacher with a World War II veteran on Zoom.
Yeah, I'm definitely different than most kids.
And we love you for that. I mean, that's absolutely why I think we're just also, enamored with the three of you. And I do want to, let me go to Conor. If Conor's done eating his enchiladas, Conor, how are you with those enchiladas right now? Okay, he's still working on the enchiladas, I think. He says when he finishes, he'll be ready to talk again. I'd love to open it up if people have questions for these three young men, and certainly I know that they have questions for the veterans. Let me also introduce, I see Beth Ruschel is with us. Beth, how are you? Beth is on the board of Honor Flight, which is a national organization which takes World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War veterans to Washington, D.C. If it's within a day drive, they can take a motor coach. If not, they fly. Beth, I think Honor Flight does have a trip planned from Pittsburgh, correct?
Yes, we're going on October 2nd.
October 2nd. And what are the
this will be our first trip in 2 years.
First trip in 2 years. Oh my. And who can go on one of these? Is it a Vietnam, Korean, or World War II veteran?
Correct, yes. Yep. And if anybody wants to go, we do have availability for our October 2nd trip.
Okay. So if anybody lives in Western Pennsylvania, would like to go on this trip, and I have heard that, I mean, these trips are phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, this is like red carpet treatment right there and back. And if people are interested, they could kind of chat with you here on the Zoom side, or you could send an email to me, Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org, and I could put them in touch with you, Beth.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're excited. We're very excited to go again.
Beth, you have a son who is either 17 or 18, correct?
Gosh. He's 18, and today it's the Marines. You know, before literally tonight we had company over, and it's the Marines Day. He's actually has a Marine recruiter picking him up tomorrow, and I'm like, no.
I thought
Nothing against Marines. Some of my closest friends are Marines, but I'm terrified.
I thought we had him convinced Air Force.
I was hoping.
Somebody got to him.
I guess. I'm not sure where the Marine kick
I blame
came from
Carl
today, but
I totally blame Carl.
and he's 18 now, so I mean, but he's still in high school. This is his senior year of high school, so he doesn't have the diploma, which you need, you know, to actually be accepted. But yeah, he can go and sign, and I have no power over it.
Well,
If you need anybody to reconnect him to like another service branch, you can go to the Naval Academy. If he's a good sailor.
Yeah, he had a talk with James on BBC quite a while ago, and James I forget how he put it to him, but something about being in a boat in the middle of the ocean, and my son's like, no, I can't do it.
I wouldn't want that. That sounds like awesome.
Hold it, Carl Curtis. Carl, were you were never in recruiting, were you?
No, I was on the other end of the recruiting, drill instructor side.
Oh.
Yes. What would you, Carl, what would you tell a young man who is considering joining the Marines? I mean, you spent time as a drill instructor.
I was an ROTC instructor too, so I certainly had a lot of influence over young kids that was in the middle of trying to make that decision. And certainly, you know, the Marines are the toughest, and so you're going to have the biggest challenge in basic training, more so than anything. So you got to be mentally prepared for that.
I don't think he is.
Some like, well, Paris Island will make that transformation in 3 months. So a kid will go from an 18-year-old frame of mind to a 21-year-old in a matter of 3 months. And that's the transformation that occurs at Paris Island. It's pretty amazing what happens in a short amount of time and how they change. But I can tell you that the Marine Corps will never put him out there unprepared for whatever it is. Certainly, we're on the front lines and first to go in a lot of times, but they're not sent off all alone. They're prepared before they get to where they're going at. And I just happen to think the Marine Corps is the best one, but I only did 20 years. So.
Oh my gosh. I looked up all the physical fitness requirements, and I was reading them off to him. I'm like, 4 miles or 3 miles, is it, in 27 minutes or something? I'm like, no.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. What they do. Wow. It's that stuff's more mental than it is physical.
Okay.
I always said it's 99% mental and 1% physical. And put a pack on a Marine and a soldier, and you know the Marine makes it with a little less pain. At least it doesn't show that, you know. So not all branches of service has their own challenges. Certainly,
we hiked at Ohio Pal today, and he was way in front of me. So maybe he's on his way to get there. He did really good all through the rocks and the mount. Oh, he was good.
Trey, what are you going to say?
Oh, I was actually I was waiting to ask this to Mrs. Ruschel about the trip to DC that you have planned for October 2nd. Is there any way, I was wondering, I also have to get permission from my parents. is there any way I could meet any of you guys up there? Because it's like 20 minutes away from my house to DC.
Well, why don't you send me or maybe Todd has your contact information and I can email you. I would have to check with the board. I know it's usually as far as accompanying on the trip, it's usually an 18 or over situation, but I'm sure we will have a block of time where we're at the National Mall. And I'm sure that you could meet up with us at the National Mall.
Yeah, I probably can't go since I have school that day, but.
Oh, right. Oh, no, it's a Saturday.
Oh, yeah. I also might actually have like sailing or something. Something to do. But yeah, if it's completely able, if I can, that would be great.
And I do know, Beth, there are what do you call the companions, the chaperones, the
guardians.
The guardians. You do also recruit volunteer guardians, chaperones to go along the trip to, assist a veteran if needed, just accompany a veteran, right, on these trips.
Yes. So that's ahead of time, like when the veterans sign up, we also have guardians that sign up ahead of time, and we pair them up all ahead of time so that the morning of the trip, they know who their veteran's going to be and the veteran knows who their guardian's going to be. That's actually how I got involved with Honor Flight. My first trip, Jack Morrow was actually my veteran. And it was just such a priceless experience, being able to spend the day with that person. And, you're supposed to be there to make sure that everything goes like it's supposed to for them and take care of them. And but I feel like I got so much more out of it. And then Isla Cole was my veteran on my second trip, and we've remained great friends. It is a very priceless experience for the guardian as well as the veteran. Isla says it was her favorite trip to DC. So
let me ask some of our older veterans here, Leo and Bob Young and Lou Graziano and Julia Parsons. Have you all been on this trip? Have you visited the World War II Museum, Lou Graziano? The World War II Memorial, I should say, in Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
You've been to.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been there.
Have you gone on an honor flight?
Todd, are you asking Dad? Or are you asking?
Yeah, I'm asking your dad.
He has not been on an honor flight, but he's been to the World War II Museum.
And how about the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, he's been to the memorial.
And what did he think of it?
What did you think of the
I
memorial?
thought it was great.
Yeah, it's impressive. Bob Young, have you been?
I have. I went with your group on a bus.
Oh, with Jerry Fisher's group, maybe.
Yes.
Yes, excellent, very good. And you should consider going on the honor flight. It's a good trip with Beth. Leo West.
Yeah, I've been to all three. My son lives in Washington.
Okay.
So he becomes my tour guide.
Okay, excellent. All right. So you don't need another trip. And Pat Andrews did ask for the link to the Pittsburgh Honor Flight. We put it here in the chat, Pat, on the Zoom side. Conor.
Yes, Todd, can you hear me?
Yes. I was just going to ask you, are there stories that you would like to share with us about maybe your great grandfather or another veteran that you've interviewed recently?
Well, there's a lot. What questions you have about my great grandfather? Because I know quite a bit about him.
Yeah, tell me about your great grandfather. Did you know him?
Well, no, because he passed away when I was a baby, so I didn't know. I knew of him, but I didn't know.
You didn't know him. How did you learn about his story, and what is that story?
Well, my grandmother interviewed him 2003, April 29th. I actually remember the whole month. It even says it if you buy Fred F. Wilson, that's his full name, DVD, and then it would say the actual date. But I've listened to him, all of his stories, and she's told me a lot about him and a lot about his background, because I gotta imagine the depressions were pretty tough for a kid. Should not be experiencing that kind of stuff, but it happens.
So he grew up, your great grandfather grew up in the Depression. Did he grow up in Louisiana?
Yes, he was originally born in Shelby County, Texas, but he moved to Ringgold when he was 5. Ringgold, Rnggold. It's a small town north of Shreveport, close to Arkansas.
Okay. And how did he enter the Army? He was an Army veteran?
Army Air Force. It was part of the Army, yes.
Right. And what was his job in the Air Force?
His job was a bomber pilot. He was a B-17 bomber pilot who flew over all around the world. Germany most of the time, but France and Poland 2 times, I remember. And that one place was the same place that Warren Goss was in Saarbrücken. That was one of his missions. And last of his mission was in Normandy, just before D-Day. And he was told by some colonel or general, whatever his rank is, to go fly over the Normandy landings.
How about that?
And I have his photos right here. This is him when he was in the Army.
Oh, how great. How great.
Yeah. He was 23 years old when he joined, and that's his family right here. As you notice in that picture, his family is pretty huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's his dad on the side, and that's his mother, and that's all the children.
And so would you say that his story is what kind of inspired you to learn more about World War II and other veteran stories?
Yeah, I would. It inspired me so much that I thought about it numerous times, and it took me months and months to find those guys because they're dying so rapidly.
Right.
Because my great grandfather's been dead 16 years ago, and not only he served, but 2 of his brothers actually did after him. Here's one of his brothers. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's
we can't see it.
But okay,
yeah, move it toward the center, move it toward your left a little bit more. There we go. That's better.
That's one of his brothers that joined the Navy.
Okay. I see it.
And his wife, who is still living, who I'm very close to, is holding that picture. And that's his other brother. Matter of fact, they're both twins, so they both served in a different ship.
How about that? Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
And Conor, I just think it's so interesting that you make these phone calls to World War II veterans and you have these conversations with them. And from my experience, a lot of older people have hearing loss. It's not always easy to talk over the phone with somebody with hearing loss. And because of that, not many people call, an older person and chat. You must have extraordinary patience and interest in, talking so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a good memory about all these people here because I was told by my grandmother several times. But would you like me to name their names?
Sure.
Okay, his father's name was Jim, and that's his oldest brother, Darius, Daris, and that's Edna. That was his mother. Marguerite, she died early. Vonnie Lee was the other one, and was Jake. He did not serve. Matter of fact, he was born without an arm, actually. Then Dugan, Maurice, Wayne, Era. My great-grandfather is on this side. And Pete, that's the one that joined, and Perry was the other one. Rena, Timpian, and Bill.
Conor, you seem very attached to the past, to history. Does a part of you wish you had lived in that time?
Well, I have no idea. I know most of my classmates really could care less. And I can remember when I was a sophomore in high school, one of my classmates, who was an old friend, I've known him since he was a sophomore. And what aggravated me the most is that he assumed that my great-grandfather was a racist, and I totally did not appreciate that. I told that he was out of his mind, crazy clueless, all those words. And I defended him that he's not a racist. My 4 great uncles that also served this country proudly. And so I told the coach, and he said, just ignore it. And that was it.
Yeah. Good. You have a good coach.
I could already tell he was clueless anyways.
Let me ask, do people here, anybody here, if they have a question for the 3 kids or, point that they want to make, please don't hesitate to speak up, chime in, raise your hand.
I'll chime in real quick. Just a thought that, Conor, I've heard you talk about, you get very passionate about the ignorance that is around whenever it comes to like the knowledge of military or military history. When did that start? At what age were you like, I want people to know what's going on?
Yeah. How old were you when you started getting interested in this stuff?
Okay. This is a very awesome question. I appreciate that. Actually, I was in the 7th grade and there was a 100-year-old 99.5 World War II veteran who was part of Patton's Third Army. And I wanted to meet him so badly, and I was devastated I didn't get to meet him because he passed away. So I just always had a determined interest in those guys, in those veterans. Of course, I could be doing millions of things, but I'm not these kind of people. I'm way different. Just Henry just answered earlier. But and I've been studying multiple times on these guys, and let's see sorry about that, I have a question. If I come to your house, could I have enchiladas? Well, I don't know. My parents would not allow strangers, so I don't know.
Ben's not a stranger. We know Ben.
I'm sorry. No problem.
Don Nemchek, you have a question for the group here. Hey, Don, can you unmute yourself? We know what branch of service that you are, privilege. We can tell by your hat.
I automatically like it.
Here, I'll ask you. There you go, Don. How are you?
I'm good. I just want to have a comment. I probably speak for some of the other veterans. We are very proud of these 3 young men. Their dedication and patriotism is inspiring during this time of our country being upside down and many people choosing to be the other way. So I just want to go and tell these young men to keep up the good work. We love you. We encourage you. And if we can help or assist you in any way, feel free personally to reach out to me. And I'm sure the other veterans feel the same way. But just way to go, guys, and keep up the good work. We're extremely proud of you and look forward to hearing more good things about you.
Thank you, Don. I totally appreciate that.
Thank you.
Let's turn the tables a little bit and have the Trey and Henry and Conor maybe ask the veterans here on the program tonight some questions. Who wants to start? One of you want to kind of throw a question out there that a veteran might be able to answer? Hey, Trey, why don't you start us off?
All right. I have a couple questions. The first one I want is, as somebody who's into technology and military technology, as you can see behind me, I have tanks up there, I have planes over there. We have a lot of veterans in the call who were combat veterans who served in tanks, planes, ships. What was your favorite piece of technology, or what technology do you think you like the most? And what technology do you think you didn't like the most? Because this comes up a lot with the people in the historical community, especially online and in conversations that I've had, is people really look at things from a historian's way and not actually from a combat veteran's way, saying that's how we get myths like the tiger was an invincible monster of a tank.
Right.
But I wanted to ask, what was your favorite piece of technology and what was your least favorite technology to dispel some of the rumors around a lot of World War II, Vietnam?
I love that question because I love that question, Trey. Every war and every era in the military has new technology that is, sometimes it's wonderful and people embrace it. Other times it's, isn't as great as you'd had hoped. Let me ask, I'll throw it out there. Is there any, Bob Young, World War II Navy?
Yeah, there wasn't much technology on a troop transport. All you had was a typewriter and a radio. what do you call them radios again? And
Yeah. What was your radio? What was it? Because you were a radio man.
I was. And I want to give them some advice on which ships to go on. It's nice to say I'm on a carrier, I'm on a battleship, but if you want to preserve life, get yourself on a little ship. Them airplanes, they don't shoot at the little ships, they shoot at the big ones.
The little ships aren't worth the effort. That's very good advice, Bob.
I actually have something to add to that.
Yeah, Trey.
I know of a lot of veterans. I know of one who might not agree with you, especially later in the war and with the kamikazes, is what would end up happening is a lot of inexperienced pilots would go for the little ships, not realizing, and literally I've heard stories from Japanese pilots who were inexperienced and went for a destroyer, and literally everybody in their squadron was screaming at them over the radio or whatever to go for the big one. And that was another thing, is target fixation is one of the huge reasons for survivability, right? Let's say you have a giant battleship, let's say this thing right here, the USS Iowa. That's always going to be a lot bigger of a target. People are going to gravitate to shoot down that thing because you get the bragging rights of, oh, I shot down a battleship, right? Or I shot up a battleship. Then a light cruiser, like you can't see right now, but it's down there. Here, I can grab it real quick. The Belfast, which is a little light cruiser that the British had. Like, nobody would want to sink this thing if the battleship was right next to them.
Not worth the effort, right?
Very good point.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Larry and then Michael. Larry, what technology did you like or dislike?
Starlight scope. The Starlight scope.
Starlight scope.
It was the scope that allowed you to. It replaced infrared, and it's the scope that when you see the night vision goggles and things today, and you see the green kind of background, that was the early version we had in Vietnam with a Starlight scope. And Vietnam veterans will tell you that let us control the night.
And when was that introduced?
We had an early version in 67.
Okay.
67, 68. But that was probably the most, no, we didn't have I wasn't flying planes or, involved in that kind of technology, but on the ground, the Starlight scope was revolutionary, and it was kind of the precursor of the night vision goggles and things that you see them using today. And we were at the 9/11. They demonstrated the current version, and it's just incredible how much it's advanced. But it let you see with minimum ambient light, and you were able to see movement and pick out a target very easily. And it really changed the dynamics, where they used to say the VC controlled the night until the Starlight scope came in, and it gave us an advantage at that point.
Is this what it looked like?
That is absurd, but it looks really cool. It's huge.
Yeah.
Well,
and I see a little M14 on the bottom. Not a very good rifle, but hey.
Was it that big, Larry?
Actually, some of them were a little bigger than that. And also they had a couple of large ones that didn't even mount on a weapon, that you had to almost like a hand mount.
They put those on.
They were incredible. They really helped. And I don't know other Vietnam vets that use Starlight scopes. Yeah, that's it. And it really makes a difference. It was just a tremendous piece of technology.
I never remember, Larry, a Marine telling me that they had a Starlight scope in Vietnam. I don't recall an Army infantry soldier saying they had them in Vietnam. I could be wrong. I wonder if that was something that the Air Force security forces got first. Sometimes that happened.
Not often.
No, okay.
I know the Army Tank Corps had something akin to a Starlight scope very, very early on. I know the Russians had it really quickly. I think the T-54 or one of those tanks had it. But it's interesting seeing it on a small arms rifle because a lot of people really don't take for granted the amount of effort that goes into scaling something down from a tank sight, right, which is originally what the night vision scope was, just something that it literally is a submarine periscope mounted on a giant armored box with treads and a big gun, down into something that you can have on like a little rifle in the forest, and that could really help to deal with insurgents. And that's amazing. And a lot of people really discount that.
Larry and Trey, thank you for that history lesson. Larry, thank you for that. That is something I'm going to investigate. Michael, how about you? What technology did you enjoy or not enjoy?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, how are you?
Oh, excellent. I was in Signal Corps, and I was a radio engineer in Vietnam, involved with a lot of the communications. My initial assignment there was at what was called an isolated signal outpost. It was a radio relay on Hantray Island, and we did most of what we did was radio relay to the Air Force, between the Army and the Air Force, so that the Air Force could support the Army on the ground. And that was, I've been told by other people that, you know, the very biggest thing that the U.S. military has is that the guys on the ground can call in either artillery, naval, or air support. And that most other armies just do not want to deal with that. This went on in World War II. It was in Korea. The same thing. When you interview the enemy soldiers, they say the worst thing that they saw was the guy on the ground with a little radio calling in artillery and air support. I'd like to talk about something else about the previous thing about the starlight scopes.
Yeah,
we talked about it being about 1967. About 1958. Do you any here remember the General Electric Theater that used to appear on television? Their tagline was "Progress is our most important product." It was there was a guy named Ronald Reagan that was the host of it. One of their advertisements was from General Electric. They advertised a low light television camera, and they advertised the way they showed it on the screen was you showed a sheet of black screen with a normal television camera, and the same scene with their low light television camera, which showed I think they had a Jeep and a couple of soldiers that were not visible to the ordinary television camera, but were to the low light camera. So there was a history there, and they were developing it at that point. So time marches on. I'd like to make one other comment about the technology. I've been following it fairly closely. Right now, drones are a big thing. Unmanned armed aerial vehicles, ground vehicles, and even ocean vehicles. You're going to see it's going to look like science fiction when in the next 10 years or so. It's going to be it's all. In fact, we've already seen a couple of things already happen over in the Middle East with drones, and we're going to see more. It's going to be a real circus. That's all I got to say. Thanks a lot.
You know, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to say, here's an image of a relay tower in Vietnam, a radio relay tower in Vietnam. I think, Michael, that's what you were referring to, how important these were to call in airstrikes for the people on the ground. And the people on the ground were usually with somebody who was carrying this big old pack on their back, which made them a big old target on the ground. They were critical.
PRC-25.
Is that what they were?
PRC-25, personal man-pack radio communicator. PRC model 25. That was the one we were trained with.
That's what you were trained with. And how heavy were they?
They were a load.
They were a load. Yes. And I think weren't there also airplanes that served as relay radio relay?
They called them satellites. They called them satellite relays. Yes, there were planes that did that too in special circumstances.
Okay. Very good. This is great. Robert McCormick, how are you?
Okay. My God, good.
You cut out a little bit. What was a piece of technology that you enjoyed?
The Starlight Scope.
Starlight Scope. So you say that too?
I was with the 199th Light Infantry Brigade, and the only place that I know we had them was on the bunker guards on the main base, because they were so new that we had to sign our names for them a dozen times, and they wouldn't let them out. They were afraid of losing them.
What year was this, Robert?
This was right after TET.
Right after TET. Okay. Yeah. So that jives with
less than a month after TET is when I went over. And I got put on bunker guard for about 2 weeks.
And were you amazed at the technology that you were able to, you know?
It was amazing. Like you said, but the ones we had were like gigantic. They were like a telescope, like 3 feet long, and it was in a big case you had to carry it in.
Oh, that is so interesting. I love this kind of stuff that you don't read about in history books. Connor, you have your hand up.
Todd, may I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
Having a great conversation with, I believe, a gentleman on the YouTube side, username Kilo19. He answered and said that the M1 was a great vehicle. He liked the ability that they were data linked with all the other vehicles in the artillery and the aviation support that it supplied. He was an Army vet and let's see here, served 96 to 2006 and several deployments around Kuwait, Qatar, Korea. Is now sort of a volunteer with the Navy. But thank you, Kilo, for answering.
I love that. I love the M1. I like the A1 a bit better. The Abrams M1A1 than the M1A2, just because I love 50 caliber machine guns. I think they're real neat. And I think that, I mean, on a tank, you have the space. Why not put more? They have the capability of penetrating light armor as well as anti-infantry role. So I think they're good. And the M1A1 had, I think, one more on the side. And the M1A2 replaced that with a 30 caliber. No, not 30 caliber. I think it was 7.62 by 51 millimeter M240 saw squad automatic weapon. But the one that like the SEAL team carries, I think. The light machine gun that we used in Afghanistan. They replaced that, the M2 with the M240 on the side of the M1 Abrams, which I believe was a mistake, but I mean,
Connor, you had your hand up.
Oh, two of my great-grandfather's stories are really funny. May I share them, please?
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay, one. The ball turret gunner was not allowed to go to the bathroom. He needed to go to the bathroom so bad, but he was not allowed to because enemy territory was involved. So the Baltic gunner apparently accidentally wet his pants and got the Purple Heart from frostbite in his wiener, actually.
I've been a part of VBC for over a year, and that's the first I've heard of that.
You're right. What a move that was. I think you would go down the first man in history to get a Purple Heart from the 8th Air Force, that's for sure. Okay, and another one was after the war. That was well after my great-grandmother, my great-grandfather met. They were at New York City, and he met General Doolittle, who was the commanding general of the 8th Air Force. And he was going to ask him why they changed the missions, because he changed the missions there. So he brought General Doolittle to my great-grandmother. Well, my great-grandmother's from Arkansas. Her name was Shirley, by the way. But he said, General Doolittle, this is my wife, Shirley. Shirley, this is General Doolittle. And you know what she said? She said, well, my name is Grace Kelly. Now get back in the taxi.
But she didn't believe it.
I guess not. Yeah, she was a Spitfire. She was a character.
No, what a character. That's a good story. Henry,
almost all people I know are characters, by the way.
You know, there tend to be a lot of characters in southern Louisiana, I've learned after several trips there, which is probably why I enjoy that part of the country so much. Henry Shepke, do you have a question for our group here?
Yeah, I was wondering, for any veterans here, what habits did like the military instill in you that you still have to this day?
That is a good question. What habits did the military instill in you that you still have to this day? And I'll give for example, okay, we're going to go to Leo, but I remember walking with a veteran and him telling me, we're walking along the side. Okay, picture this. We're walking down a sidewalk and there are big grassy areas to my left and to my right. And I'm going to the right. So I start walking across the grassy area and the veteran just stood on the sidewalk. And I said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "I can't walk on grass." I've got to go all the way down the sidewalk and turn right down the other sidewalk. I just can't. I never walk on grass because of my basic training. Leo West.
I still make my bed the same way they did in the service with a white collar.
You still make your bed the same way that you were taught in the military. That's good. Does anybody else have something? Bill Boswell. Bill,
All right,
I know
Todd.
Hey.
3 things. First, have a plan. Second, have a backup plan. And third, always take responsibility for your own actions.
So those are 3 things that you learned in the Air Force.
Yes.
You went to the Air Force Academy.
I did.
Would you recommend it to others?
Yes. I think any of the service academies. I'm going to be interviewing a kid who wants to go to Annapolis in the middle of next month. I've served on the Service Academy screening board for Pennsylvania for, I think, 11 years. And this kid has some of the best qualifications I've ever seen. I would put him in the top 5% easily, maybe the top 1%. If you want to go to a service academy, and others on the broadcast may have been as well, it has to be your decision, number one. And number two, it's not what you think it is. You will be very surprised when you get there in terms of what's expected of you. And it's not for the faint of heart, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
You really need to be the one who wants to go there. You should never go to a service academy if it was someone else's idea and they talked you into it. That just doesn't work.
That doesn't work. You need to really want it.
Yes. And you need to try to figure out what you're getting yourself into. I think the analogy to going to Paris Island is probably somewhat similar, except it's, other than the physical part, it's Paris Island on steroids.
Paris Island is 4 years long.
Yes.
Right. Wonderful. Conor, you have your hand up again.
I'll share my veteran stories. How's that?
That sounds good. Why don't you tell us another one?
Jack Gutman. Jack Gutman's a good friend of Warren Goss, by the way. Jack Gutman served as a Navy corpsman. And basically what he did as a corpsman, he was basically a medic. He helped take care of the wounded and all that. And his first combat experience was D-Day, June 6th to 44. And he's got vivid memories he gets emotional about and doesn't like to speak too much. But I think there was 5,600 boats and 150 troops there, if I remember right. And his other battle was in the Pacific called the Battle of Okinawa. Now, I'm sure that you've heard about the Okinawa campaign. It was also a disaster. Here he is taking care of the wounded, and he sees a kamikaze pilot commit suicide and hits the Mexico. Not only killed a captain, but killed 80 men in that ship. So it was terrible. And General Buckner was killed. He was shot by the Japanese and killed him. And he said he was a great general, and that was a very sad event for the 10th Army.
Yeah.
And another good one is Jim Kunkel. He was a P-38 Lightning pilot, and what got him into aviation to this day is that his dad wanted to be an aviator, but couldn't work out. And his dad unfortunately died when he was 9 years old from World War I injuries, so that couldn't happen. And one of the highlights of his life is meeting Charles Lindbergh, who was the aviator who was willing to serve his country and got crosswise with Franklin Delano FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So, I'll tell you about how he got shot down. He got shot down on September the 16th of 44. And he doesn't remember much, but he was against 20 German fighters. Basically, he was hit by FW-190s, and it hit the fuel tank and it just exploded. And all he can remember is he's fallen, he's hung up to the tree, and he's badly burned his eyes, burned his neck, and like you cannot believe. And he was picked by the 1st Division, the 1st Infantry Division at the Battle of Okinawa, and he was a close friend of the commander, his name was Leonard Scott. Leonard Scott had been the 1st Infantry Division in North Africa, landings in North Africa campaign and in landings of Sicily, and he was badly wounded and was sent to the hospital. And then on D-Day, he was in the first wave. Of course, they were in the first wave anyways. Let's see. He was in the first wave about 20 minutes, and he got wounded again and got sent to the hospital. And he obviously saw Jim Kunkel flying from an explosion of the P-38, and that next day gets wounded again, like you cannot believe. And he's got to hear his stories pretty much. And he was trying to look for Leonard Scott, but unfortunately, he was lucky to make through World War II in Korea, but died at a very early age, so he could not meet him again. So I think those stories are interesting.
Oh, they're so interesting.
No matter what they do, no matter what they serve, whether it's Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, they're still interesting to me.
Trey, can you tell us the story of one of those ships behind you? Pick one and let us know why you put it together and why it's interesting to you.
All right, first, I have so many that I want to tell, but I want somebody's input on which country I should do. Germany, America, or Britain. Because Germany, I have 3 ships. One doesn't have a story. One has a slightly big story. One is super famous. America, I have 3 really famous ships. And Britain, I have also 2 very famous ships.
Henry Shepke says the U.S. Pick a U.S. ship.
I like your style. All right, U.S. ship. Which one? Enterprise, Iowa, or Wahoo? I'm going to go with Enterprise since Iowa didn't have that much history.
Let's go with the Enterprise.
Enterprise is extremely historical as a ship. Let me get it out here just so you guys can get a look on how this thing looked.
Look at that thing.
This is a U.S. aircraft carrier, CV-6. Here, I'm going to angle my camera down so you guys can see from the top. This is CV-6. It was a Yorktown class aircraft carrier. It was launched in the late 1930s and served all throughout World War II. It has the distinction of being one of the most fought ships of World War II, one of the best combat ships of World War II. He started immediately in World War II. She was away from Pearl Harbor. She was based in Pearl Harbor when it was bombed. What happened was she entered, and Halsey was her admiral for a bit at this time. And this is when Halsey made a lot of his famous quotes about killing Japanese people on board this ship. And eventually he got his wish. The Enterprise was deployed to Marshall Islands in the Marshall Islands raid, carried out extremely successfully. It was not there at the Battle of Coral Sea, however. Its sister Yorktown was. The Battle of Coral Sea is the first aircraft carrier battle ever. The Yorktown was damaged. The Lexington was sunk, but Lexington's a whole different ship. Look into her as well. But we stopped the Japanese, and that was the biggest thing. Enterprise was in the sequel, the Midway Battle. Huge battle. Basically, if Coral Sea is A New Hope, Enterprise is the is The Empire Strikes Back. It's massive, turns the tide of the war in the Americans' favor permanently. 4 Japanese aircraft carriers sunk. Hiryu, Soryu, Kaga, and Akagi, with only 1 carrier destroyed on our side and 1 destroyer destroyed on our side. Extremely good, well fought battle. Then it immediately gets called into Guadalcanal. And this is where, if you were on the email, you would have seen a picture of all 3 of us. And this is where the picture of me pointing aggressively at the Enterprise comes from. The ship was involved in pretty much every large major naval battle that involved carriers in that campaign. It was destroyed. Well, not destroyed. It had its elevator destroyed, its front elevator, which if you can see down here is right here. Its front elevator was destroyed during the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, and she was hit a lot during the Battle of Santa Cruz. She was repaired. She came back and sunk the battleship Kirishima. Or no, not Kirishima, Hiei, sorry. It sunk Hiei. And it continued to support the battle until it was finished. This is the Enterprise's longest campaign of anything. Then she gets called to the battle. The next major battle that she fights is, she engages a bit. The next major battle that she fights is the Marianas Turkey Shoot, which is basically Japan sends a bunch of aircraft carriers and a bunch of planes down, and every single one of them gets shot up. They lose 2 aircraft carriers, including the Shokaku, which was a fleet carrier that is basically the Japanese version of Enterprise, the Yorktown class carriers. And the other one I forget the name of. It was the Japanese nicest aircraft carrier, basically the Japanese version of the Essex, if you will.
I'm going to interrupt you, Trey, to ask a burning question that Henry put in the Zoom that I was wondering too. If you wouldn't mind showing that ship again, how long does it take you to put one of those things together?
So these are actually Lego sets. So these are not Lego sets. These are from Kobe, which is a Lego-esque manufacturer, but these will take me 2 to 3 weeks to put together. But downstairs, I'm not going to grab it. I am working on the model of the USS Yorktown, not the CV5, the CV10. I already have something that's similar to the CV5. And that's taken me about all summer. I bought the model with my grandpa when I was at the USS Yorktown in Charleston at the beginning of the summer. And I still am on the hull. So it's probably going to take me a year or two. It's an extremely painstaking process, especially with the model that I chose, which is a 1/700 scale model, which makes it teeny tiny. But for some reason, apparently you still have to put each individual gun barrel on each gun.
Oh, wow. And highly detailed. I want to go to Henry. Do you have another question for our veterans, Henry?
Well, I was wondering, for any veteran that's here, what was your first day in the military like, and how did it affect you and your service as a whole?
That's a good question. Do you remember your first day? Bob Young, you have your hand up.
Yes. My service was from 1943 to 1947. But to answer your question you asked before, what did I take from the service? I still do the Morse code in my head. I've done it so often that I can still, at a smaller rate, of course, but I still know it back and forward.
You still can do Morse code in your head?
Yes.
Oh, that's neat. They must have drilled that into your brain. Oh my gosh. That is so great. Lisa Refner says she does not remember her first day in the Air Force.
I can tell you why.
Why?
Because from the minute you got off the plane in San Antonio to the minute you got to the Air Force Base, Lackland, the in-processing, getting to the pad at the dorms, the squadron, getting off the bus, being screamed at, 6:15 raise from Sunday, getting you upstairs, getting you in bed, because we got there at like 11 o'clock at night, getting in bed, and then reveille going off at 5 a.m., having no clue what you were supposed to do. So I have no real clear memory of anything till noon the next day.
So it's a blur. It's just one blur.
I know what happened, but I could not tell you exactly how.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a blur.
It's a blur.
And they do that on purpose.
Yes. Yes. They put you in a different state of mind so they could break you down to build you back up.
Exactly.
I want to just welcome Caleb Craig. Caleb, thank you for joining us. I know, I believe that it's through you. I think that Henry got connected to us. And I just want to invite you to say whatever you want to say about what your interest in veterans in this subject.
Well, actually, I think it was Henry that actually directed me towards you guys and then get in email contact with you. But yeah, my connection, I don't know if I ever mentioned this before. I found a box of old letters from previous family members who served all the way back to 1864. And I think that kind of sparked something into like getting into autograph collecting and reaching out to veterans through letters. And I've got I just moved into my house. So I was going through some of my collection. And if you include, athletes and celebrities and stuff who served, probably got more than 2,500 signatures. So there's quite a few. But my grandpa, Conor was showing pictures of his grandfather. So I thought I'd get my grandfather. Maybe you might notice some resemblance. He's about the same age as me here.
I love it. That's you in a costume.
Yeah, pretty much. So he served kind of like in between Korea and Vietnam in the Air Force. And so that's kind of, and then his brother served and I got letters from them and all kinds of stuff. So that's kind of what kind of sparked an interest through them.
So you're like Conor, you're kind of drawn into the past, into these stories, into this history.
Although I'm kind of the person I'd like to listen and soak it all in and stuff, and chime in there, here and there, but just listen to their stories and just show my appreciation, my patriotism, or appreciate everything that you guys do, and just want to say thank you for your service to everybody here.
Thank you, Caleb. How wonderful! This is so great. Conor, yes.
Well, first of all, I like to thank all veterans for their service, by the way. I totally appreciate that. But I would like to talk about Dave Hamilton. Is that okay? Because Dave Hamilton comes from an illustrious family from New York.
Yes, talk about Dave Hamilton, and I'll try and find his photo here because he does come from an illustrious family.
Well, Dave Hamilton originally is from New York. He's an Air Force brat. His dad was I'll talk about his dad first, then I'll talk about him. Well, his dad was in North Africa. I don't know if you know his name. Pierpont Morgan Hamilton was his name. He served in World War I with Major Tui Spots, who later became General Tui Spots, who was commander. And his dad was a Medal of Honor recipient because he was able to call for a ceasefire in Morocco after he found the French general. And the senior officer, Colonel Crawl, was killed instantly. He was killed from a machine gun nest, starting from the navel all the way up to his body. And he was put for the Medal of Honor after General Patton said that he saved about 11,000 lives. And he was awarded the Medal of Honor by the same guy, Tui Spots. And I don't know if you know, but his dad served under General Truscott during North Africa, who was a real sharp, fine general. And his dad also met Terry Allen, General Terry Allen, who was the 1st Division commander. So.
And I'll interrupt you just to tell you that, or just to say that here is a brief video of Pierpont Morgan Hamilton receiving his Medal of Honor from President Roosevelt, seated on the left, George Patton on the right, and then on the
General
far
Marshall
left
on the left.
was General
Marshall was on the left.
Right. Yeah, and that's his receiving a Medal of Honor, and his name Pierpont Morgan. He comes from J.P. Morgan family on the one side, and Alexander Hamilton family on the other side.
Mm. And he also said that the Medal of Honor changed his dad's life pretty much. And later on became Brigadier General and ended up serving on Eisenhower's staff at NATO, which is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And his dad became a 2-star general when he retired. And Dave Hamilton served as a Pathfinder pilot in World War II, dropping paratroopers. I don't know if you know what a Pathfinder is, but a Pathfinder is the elite version of paratroopers. Basically, they were well trained, not because they were evil, they were well trained. But one of the highlights of his life is meeting General Jumpy Gavin. I don't know if you know who that is. General Gavin was 37 years old when he was Brigadier General, Deputy Commander of the 82nd Airborne Division. And he said that Gavin forgot that they were Pathfinder pilots. So his Pathfinder commander, Colonel Crouch, ordered them to go see General Gavin. And he thought the world of General Gavin. And but before that, he lost an engine going through the southern route with the 436 Troop Carrier Pathfinder Group, and they were ordered to go to Casablanca. And the guy who signed it was Bob Hoover. Now, Bob Hoover was a Spitfire pilot who got shot down and spent time in a prison camp. And in my mind, the best pilot in aviation history, and was called by Chuck Yeager one of the finest pilots that he's ever seen or heard of, really the finest pilot he's ever seen or heard of. And he said he would later see him later on in life flying Mooney twin engines. And he said he was a fantastic pilot, and I definitely agree with that 100%. And in Korea, he flew 50 missions there, and Korea was pretty tough for him because there was negative flag all over the place, and there was MIGs, MIGS. That was the negative consequence. The heavy flak not wounded his navigator, his gunner, and a few others, and he lost his wing commander. His wing commander was killed instantly because he got a direct hit in the bomb bay with some heavy flak. And another sad loss was a close friend of his named Pete Britton. Now, Pete Britton was the Eastern Airline pilot who was angry with the fact that he missed combat in World War II. Basically, if he missed combat in World War II, he sort of felt the guilt that he missed the war and wanted to make up for it. And he decided that if asked Dave if he wanted to go in the Mediterranean, he said, "I don't think it's a good idea." He says, "Come on." Well, there he goes. He was a good guy. He got shot down and got killed. It took 2 guys with him. And what hits me the most is that he feels guilty about that to this day. But obviously there was nothing that he can do to do that for it. And then he would later on, Air Force Reserve, Dover Air Force Base as an intelligence officer, became Lieutenant Colonel. Very interesting guy. I'm still honored to this day to ever speak with him.
Do you have any plans for all those stories that you have written in your notebook? Do you have an idea, do you want to write a book about it someday, or an article, or a school paper, or, something that a project, a website? Do you have any idea what you're going to do with all these stories, or is it just something that you're doing for your own personal growth and interest?
Well, I can pass it down to younger generations because I feel like I believe in patriotism. I also believe in knowing what history is. Okay. Because I feel like that I'm one of the few people that really care, and that is totally sad. And I feel so bad for these guys right now because they have literally got to go through hell so that we don't have to. And it's sad that they are going through hell, and yet nobody cares to even learn from it. And that disappoints me to this day.
Sean Hall, you got a message from Kilo on the YouTube side?
Yeah, it was the question that was asked about the first day from Henry. He said, first day in basic was scary. It took a few weeks to realize that no matter what you do, you're wrong. Even if you're right, you're still wrong. I feel like Carl Curtis might know a thing or two about
Curtis.
This. He said, Kilo said, took me a bit to realize all the yelling by drill wasn't personal. Worst they can do is make you stronger. After you complete basic, you look back and it was comical in a way.
Yes. Yes. Henry Shepke, you have a photo of your own great-grandfather.
Yeah. His name was I don't know if you can see there.
Yeah.
Earl Jodway. This is my great grandfather on my dad's side, and he was in the 32nd Red Arrow division, which was mostly like volunteers from like Michigan and Wisconsin. He was from Traverse City, Michigan, and he fought in New Guinea in the Pacific during World War II. He got malaria. He fought in the Battle of Buna. I don't know much about him other than that, but this is a picture that I have of him. And also on my mom's side, my great grandmother and great grandfather served stateside.
Oh, great pictures. Great. And would you say, Henry, that that is kind of part of what has inspired your interest in veterans?
I think that I started getting interested before I even knew about their service or anything. But I think knowing that, you know, I kind of have a connection to like history, I guess you could say, is inspiring, definitely.
Yeah.
I wish I was able to speak with them about World War II. My great grandmother was still alive when I was living, but I never knew or mentioned anything about the war. So I especially really wished I could have talked to them about that. Yeah, but
you know, Henry, it's so interesting. I think many of us here feel the same way about our ancestors or our grandparents or great grandparents if we knew them. I remember a World War II veteran telling me, I wish I had talked to my grandfather about the Civil War. And I realized, oh my gosh, that is just a universal feeling that when you're, you know, by the time you're old enough to realize that this is important, that loved one is sometimes gone. Trey, we haven't heard from you in a while. How are you?
Good. I was thinking about the grandfathers and the great grandfathers, and I have a great grandfather who served during World War II, and I have a grandfather who wrote a book about him.
Yes, you
and
do.
I have a bunch of pictures in that book, and I have that book right here.
I have that book right here too, somewhere, right here.
But yeah, his name's Ziggy Wojcik. He was a merchantman in the U.S. Navy. He served on the USS Polaris AG-11 or AB-11. I forget which one it is. It's a armored refrigerator ship, and he was a 5-inch gunner on the 5-inch 38 caliber Mark 40, I think, gun. But it was the one that they slapped everywhere, like the Bofors. And this is a picture of him right here.
Yeah.
That's in 2006. That's during World War II on board the Polaris. That's the barrel of his gun. He had a couple big things. This book's all about the interviews. My grandpa interviewed him, and the thing that he did, it's very special, is he shot up his own airplane. So basically, what ended up happening was and Henry, I don't know if it's possible to purchase the book, but check in with but message Jim Wojcik on the Zoom. He's still on the Zoom, I assume.
Yes, he
he's
is.
the one who wrote the book.
Yes.
He's my grandpa. And basically what ended up happening is this, but with this downed plane, is when it flew in, it was a PBY Catalina. I have a picture of it, or a PBY Mariner. It was a B-24 that they converted into a seaplane. So there's the Polaris, there's the Mariner. I think it's a Mariner at least, and you can see the gun right there. And what ended up happening is they had documents on it, right? And they didn't want the Japanese to get the plane since it was a float plane. It floated, so it couldn't just sink. So what ended up happening is my great grandpa and everybody on his gun turned the gun at the plane and shot it with this giant 5-inch cannon that's designed to be an anti-ship cannon. Everybody was safe. It was a totally controlled sinking. They tried to actually tow it. There's one of the pictures in the back of the book where they tried to tow it. You can see right here. They tried to tow the plane, but the tow line kept snapping, so they couldn't tow it.
So they had to sink it.
But it's an amazing story. Sadly, he passed away, but he was a great guy. I actually met him.
And
there's a couple pictures that I have.
it's wonderful that your grandfather got to have that conversation with him before he passed to get that history. That is so important. I see that we're a couple minutes past time here. Henry, you were going to add something and I skipped right over you.
What I was gonna say is, I'm not sure if anybody's heard of Sidney Walton, but he's a World War II veteran. He's been going around to all states and visiting all of the governors. It's called a No Regrets Tour. He actually has a website, but he's visiting all the governors, presidents, multiple presidents of the U.S. and foreign countries. And he's doing it because he had a regret that when he was a kid, he had the chance to meet a Civil War veteran, but he didn't. So what he's doing is giving people like a chance to meet a World War II veteran. So I was just going to add that to when we're talking about meeting some of the older veterans. I was just going to add that.
That is so good. Thank you, Henry, for that info. Conor.
Yeah, I know Sidney Walton personally. I've spoke to him on the phone with his son. Sidney Walton's a great guy, and you're right. He had a regret that he regrets for the rest of his life, the rest of his 102 years of life, to meet a Civil War veteran, but he missed it. And he served in the China-Burma Indian Theater, and from New York City. And I'm still honored to this day to actually meet Sidney Walton. By the way, good guy.
That is so neat. Let's end with Trey. I know that you have something to say. We're going to end the program shortly. And why don't you say it? But I also want to remind people that it looks like we are going to have Lou Graziano with us on September 20th to share more of his story of World War II. We'll be able to connect you to his book, which is for sale on Amazon and elsewhere, and hear more of his story. But Trey, what were you going to say?
I was actually going to say the name of the plane that the type of plane that he shot down, the Coronado is the type of plane, the PB-2Y.
PB-2Y.
And he actually, there's in this book in the back here, this is one of great-grandpa Zig's keepsakes. It's a picture of the Polaris signed with all the members of the PB-2Y's crew. And here's a commendation from the naval authorities talking about the heroism shown in shooting down the PB-2Y. And I also wanted to just say thank you for having me here. It was a pleasure talking to everybody here tonight. And my heart goes out to every veteran here who served in a theater of war, not in a theater of war, in the front lines, in the rear echelon. I don't care any of it. If you served in the military, you're cool in my books, as long as you don't commit any bad things like the guy who shot up Kennedy. He was a Marine. I don't like that kind of people, but if you're good.
Okay,
good.
so we're clear that you don't like murderers and assassins. Yeah. That's good.
But
it's a low bar, Trey. It's a low bar, but
yeah,
that's,
it's a low bar. If you're not a menace to society, you're good. And you served in the military, you're automatically cool in my books.
Thank you. Good.
So
good.
just thank you for everybody that's here tonight. See you guys.
Thank you, Trey.
Call, but I just wanted to say thank you.
Henry, last words here with us tonight.
Before we left, I just wanted to make sure I say thank you for having me, and thank you so much to all the veterans here for your service.
Oh, how terrific. Thank you for joining us, Henry. And Conor, anything final you want to say before we end the program here?
Well, I appreciate the amount of people that really care about my history, my service. And I totally appreciate that. And if you have any questions about our work, feel free to ask it.
Yeah, and please do. I was going to say that if you want to connect to Henry or Conor or Trey, email me, Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org, and I could connect you with these guys. I know Conor would probably love to interview Lou over the phone, Bob over the phone if he hasn't, Julia over the phone if he hasn't. And I know also that Henry would love an autograph. And I want to remind people, we have a veteran story with Pete Mecca coming up on Thursday, September 9th. And we are going to have a Holocaust survivor who is going to join us. Bob Rouhani is going to join us and share his story of growing up in Hungary and being a Holocaust survivor. His mother did survive a concentration camp. His father did not. He survived the Jewish ghetto in Budapest. And so he'll be sharing his story. That's Thursday night at 7 p.m. Thank you all for joining us tonight.
Wait,
This
I
was
have
fun.
one more thing that I want
Yes.
to say about my email. So if you want to contact me, please don't contact Todd or Mr. DiPastino because I don't think he has the right email, the one that I use. I use iberman@keyschool.org. I'm going to put in the chat right now.
Okay.
So if you want to get in contact with me, use that email. It's my school email. That's the one I check over the week. That's the one I check pretty much every hour. So if you want a quick thing and you want me to get back to you fairly quickly, I'll use that one. But I just want
If
to
you want the hotline to Trey, you've got to use that email. And I'm going to start using that email, Trey. Very good. The direct line to Trey. Yeah. Cut out the middleman.
Just so I can leave the thing on a positive note. Thank you for your service. I already said that, but I just wanted to say thank you for your service because I feel like if I don't end everything with something that's not promoting an email, I think it will be a lot more memorable. But just thank you for your service.
Very good. Yes, that's better than ending with a presidential assassin. Okay. Good night, everyone. Take care.